Greetings, God's people, peace and blessings. We are here once more to study the word of the Lord. But before we do so, ask the Lord for his guidance in this matter. Father in heaven, we thank you again for the opportunity we have to call upon your name. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Greetings, peace and blessings, God's people. Topic of discussion is, our real enemy is not flesh and blood. Our real enemy is not flesh and blood. Scripture of meditation comes to us from Ephesians 6 verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. This fight is bigger than flesh and blood. This fight go all the way in the spirit. We are wrestling against an enemy who most of the time disguises himself in many forms. So when we see people acting, it's just a manifestation of the enemy. The enemy is the one who controls the mind and heart and working from behind the scenes. So this war is way bigger than flesh and blood. So our real enemy is the one who is hiding behind the scene. Our enemy, the devil, is not flesh and blood. So our fight is against evil warriors from the spirit world. So the devil is the one who manipulates the scene, manipulates the action, manipulates people. People are just the hands and feet of the devil when they choose, if and when they choose to work for him. On the other hand, these evil spirits influence mankind in the lowest to the highest position of power to cause destruction, death, stress, and all sorts of problems in our world. So when we look around on a daily basis and we see how the enemy is moving, problems after problems. Everywhere you go, people is so full of stress. People is so worried. People want some solution. People want help. There's problems everywhere. When you're watching news, more negative energy is pushed on the news more than positive energy. But this is just a plan of the enemy to weary out God's people, stress out God's people, stress out the people on a daily basis, so they can lose focus on the God of creation. So the real fight is not flesh and blood. The enemy, the devil, the arch deceiver, is the one working to deceive God's people. 2 Corinthians 11 verse 14 and 15. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So Satan, don't marvel when you see stuff happening, and a lot of times people get panicky and frightened and worry about the stuff that's happening in the world. But when you go in the scriptures say, don't marvel, don't worry too much, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So Satan used many disguises to deceive people. And he have his ministers also who disguise themselves. So when you look around, there's so much deception in this world. You don't even know who to trust. But God is still here. God is still faithful. God is still the number one. God is still our help. God is our sustainer. God is our protector in any time and any season. Our real enemy is in the spirit realms working. So sometimes the enemy manifests himself in the physical, but a lot of times the enemy works from behind the scene, using people who are willing to work for him. Matthew 7 verse 22 and 23. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? So it's a question. So many will say in the last days, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have we cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works. So many shall say these things. But hear what the Lord is saying. And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So a lot of deceivers are out there, pretending to be servants, prophets, pastors, teachers, and men of God. So many will say in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works. So don't marvel at the works sometimes when you see it, because a lot of works are done with different ulterior motive. So people do things, people, deceive people in many different ways, because, people realize that the world is running in a opposite direction, and, people are confused. So many times, the enemy use his people to deceive the people. So a lot of people are confused out there. But God is here saying, Jesus is here saying unto us, many shall say, have we not prophesied in thy name? And he is going to say to them, I know you not. Because their works wasn't in line with the works of God. Their works wasn't in line with the scriptures. So God shall say unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me. Let us hold on to the words of the Lord, that when that day come, God will find us line up with the scriptures. Our works will not be in vain. Our enemy is very crafty, so we have to be careful of the enemy on a daily basis. But if we trust in the Lord and his word, he will give us the extra strength. He will give us the ammunition we need to withstand the wiles of the enemy. When we see things happening in the physical world, good or evil, it has already been played out in the spiritual world. People make plans in their minds before they actually do it with hands and feet. So before we act, before we speak, everything is in the mind. Our thoughts turn into actions. So everything starts here. So before people do evil, people think about it. Before people do good, people think about it. everything starts with the mind. That is where the whole manifestation starts, right in the mind. And evil energy is always around us. So the devil is always around us, tempting, telling us to do evil things. The devil is the master of craftiness, disguise, deception. The devil is the master of everything that is evil. We are in the middle of a fight, and the devil, our greatest adversary, is pushing the war on God's people every day. So people of God, beware. The enemy, like a roaring lion, seeking to deceive, to destroy God's people on a daily basis. God is still in control, even though some people question his ruling because of all the evil that we see on a daily basis. So a lot of people like doubtful Thomas, a lot of people doubt the Lord, a lot of people ask questions. It's natural to ask questions because our mind is limited. We have limited understanding to almost everything. We never understand the full intent of the heart. But God, who knows everything, is our strength. God, who knows everything, is our protector. God, who knows everything, is the source of our strength. So we need not worry what the enemy is doing. Deuteronomy 28, verse 7. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways. So we rely on the teachings and laws and rules and commandments of the Lord. The Lord will cause our enemies who rise up against us to be smitten. So we don't have to worry. All we need to do is just put on the whole armor of God, that we may be able to stand up when the enemy comes. Because it's not if the enemy gonna come, is when the enemy gonna come. The enemy will never leave God's people, because he know that God's people are special. So he's out on a daily basis to deceive God's people, accuse God's people on a daily basis. So God's people, be wise, read the scriptures, and obey the laws and rules and commandments of the Lord. Isaiah 54, verse 17. No weapon that form against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. So God is here saying through Isaiah the prophet, no weapon that form against thee shall prosper. If we trust and rely on the Lord, not on self, because, the ego inside of us, fool us at times. But let us hold on and rely on the powers and strength of the Most High. Because when we do it, no weapon that rises against us shall prosper. No weapon that form against us can destroy us. If we put our trust, if we put our life, if we put our mind, heart and soul in the Lord and His teachings. Satan is influencing the people of this world through his lies and deceptions. So the devil uses so many different tactics on a daily basis to entice the people. And a lot of times we are being deceived. But fear not. hold on to the words and teachings of the Lord, because this is where our strength lies. This is where we can get strength and courage on a daily basis. Have faith in God. God will never leave us. God will never leave us alone for the enemy to have total control over us. Our real enemy is not flesh and blood. Our real enemy is spirit. But the devil uses his influence on the people on a daily basis to convince them to work for him. The more time we spend with God and His words, He will open our eyes to see the many traps the enemy uses to deceive us. So, here on this battlefield, the only chance we have is when we rely upon God through His words and teachings, that on our daily walk we won't be surprised by the enemy. So we have to study the word of the Lord on a daily basis, obey His teachings, obey His laws and rules, because this is the only way we're gonna be truly protected from the wiles of the enemy. James 4 verse 7 and 8. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Submit yourself to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. So now is not the time to be running to and fro. Submit yourself to God, not the devil. Submit yourself to God. Resist the devil and he will flee. So when the devil come upon you, resist the devil by using the words of God. Remember the words in the scriptures, but to remember them you have to study them on a daily basis, because there are so much distractions out there that stress, problem, everything is on your mind. So a lot of times you get caught up in the war that you don't even remember to submit yourself to the Lord. You are so confused with the problems of life, the problems of the day, that a lot of times you don't even remember to ask the Lord for His protective care. But draw nigh to God. Draw nigh to God on a daily basis. Study the scriptures. Obey the laws and rules of God on a daily basis, because the war is not a one-day war. It's every day. Every day you wake up, the devil is ready out there to deceive you. So draw nigh to God and He will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. So on a daily basis you have to be under the protection of the Lord, because this is the only way you can withstand the wiles of the enemy. Luke 10 verse 19. Behold, I gave unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the powers of the enemy, and nothing shall be any means hurt you. So God is here saying through Luke, I have given unto you powers. God has given us His powers through the scriptures, through His words, to tread upon scorpions, to tread upon the enemy, and nothing shall be any means hurt you. So as long as we rely upon the laws and teachings of the Most High, we have no fear. He will show us the wiles of the enemy. He will show us the tactics of the enemy. So there is no more fear in us. we won't worry about what the enemy can do, because God has revealed unto us the wiles of the enemy, all his many, deceptive moves and strategies. God has shown it unto us. In this spiritual warfare, we have to obey the words of God and put on the whole armor to withstand the darts of the enemy. The enemy have many traps. One of his favorite is the pleasures of life. So the enemy uses so many tactics. People are suffering on a daily basis, and a lot of people think that material things gonna solve their problems. So a lot of times the devil uses material things to draw the people away. But trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. Rely upon the Lord in all things. Not on self, not on what man and women can do, but trust in the Lord. Give the Lord your heart on a daily basis. Give the Lord your mind. Work for the Lord. Do the Lord's will. Obey his laws and commandments. And the Lord will stand up for you. When the enemy comes, the Lord will make a way of escape for you. God is saying unto us, wake up before it's too late. So, now is the time. No one knows what the next moment gonna be. We look around and we see people dying on a daily basis. No one knows when their time gonna come. So now is the appointed time to give the Lord your heart and your mind and soul. Now is the time to work for the God of creation. Now is the time to submit yourself unto the Lord, because no one knows what the next moment gonna bring. God's people, flesh and blood, is not our real enemy. The devil and his agents are. So we see people doing evil on a daily basis, but the source of their action is coming from the enemy, because they allow the enemy to control the heart and mind. So they are there working for the enemy, sometimes without even knowing that they are doing the enemy's work. But when we study the scriptures, when we study the words of the Lord, God will reveal unto us what good works are. All good things coming from God. He is the source of good. So only when we rely upon God and his word can we really do good works. We will obey his laws and rules and his commandments, and he will teach us the way, the truth, and the life. The devil uses people as his slave on a daily basis to perform his work. Matthew 10 verse 16. Behold, I sent you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as a dove. So on a daily basis, God's people are like sheep amongst wolves. God's people in this world are like, sheep amongst the wolves, amongst the lions. But be ye therefore wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. How we gonna be wise? We're gonna be wise through studying the scriptures, studying the words of God, listening to God's teaching on a daily basis. That is where we're gonna get our wisdom. It's not in self, but in the God of creation. Ephesians 6 verse 10 and 11. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand the wiles of the enemy. So finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord. Only in the Lord we can be strong. There is no strength in anything else in the world than in the Lord. He is the God of creation. He is all powerful and almighty. So finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. So this is the only way we can stand up, if we put on the whole armor of God, trust in the Lord on a daily basis, and God will give us the strength we need to withstand. God's people, peace and blessings, and may we continue to obey the wills of the Lord, knowing on a daily basis that our enemy is not flesh and blood, but our enemy is the devil, who most of the time works in the spirit realms to disguise himself. Peace and blessings. Continue to study the word of the Lord, and he will give us the strength we need to withstand the wiles of the enemy. Peace and blessings, God's people.